All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ariel Rivers, NACD's Pacific Region Representative, and I will facilitate this 1-hour urban and community conservation webinar. Thank you for joining us to learn about different urban soil health initiatives in Indiana and Oregon. We will record this webinar and post it on NACD's website, along with the presentations for future access. Please feel free to share these widely with anyone who may be interested in seeing these or previous presentations. Before we get started today, I'd like to introduce Ron Rohall to provide a few introductory comments. Ron is chair of NACD's Urban and Community Resource Policy Group, which is part of our Natural Resources Policy Committee. Ron?
Okay, and thank you, Ariel, and I welcome all of you to the monthly Urban and Community Conservation webinars offered by the National Association of Conservation Districts through the support of our sole sponsor, the Scotts Miracle-Gro Company. These sessions are designed by NACD's Urban and Community Resource Policy Group, a subcommittee of district officials and partners charged with guiding the association's services and support for districts' work in developing areas. Our goal for these webinars is to help districts share what they are doing nationwide, enable them to learn from each other and various agencies and organizations. And we appreciate the support of the Scotts Miracle-Gro Foundation for making them possible. I invite you to let us know what you think about each webinar and what other topics you would like us to cover by contacting NACD staffer Ariel Rivers. And please tell our NACD leadership what type of assistance you would like from your National Association for Urban and Community Conservation work. And now, turn it back to Ariel for the introduction of our speakers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ron. And before we get started today, we have two excellent speakers that are going to present on urban soil health initiatives in their respective states. But before we get started, I would like to make a few announcements on behalf of NACD. So first off, I'd like to thank today's speakers as well as all the others this year for their presentations. And I would like to encourage our participants today and viewers of our recordings, I'd like to encourage you to think about presenting as well. So if you have an innovative project that you would like to share, specific outreach strategies, or something that you're really, really proud of in the urban and community space, please feel free to reach out to me so that we can make sure to schedule you for a future event. I'd also like to acknowledge the recipients of our fiscal year 2022 Urban Agriculture Conservation Grants. We just awarded an additional $1 million to 31 conservation districts through our partnership with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. These grants have been very successful throughout the years in providing opportunities for districts to provide conservation technical assistance in urban agriculture and conservation. And of course, we'll hear from one today, Erin Kilcullen from Deschutes in Oregon. So I'd just like to acknowledge our 31 recipients this year and thank NRCS again for the great sponsorship and support of that program through the years. And finally, I'd like to remind everyone to take a look at the agenda for this year, NACD's summer meeting this year, which will take place in San Juan, Puerto Rico, July 16th through 19th. This is going to be a really great networking and learning opportunity from the urban conservation and agricultural perspective, as well as the perspective of unique and diversified smallholder agricultural operations. So we have information on our website about that meeting, and it should be a really great networking and learning opportunity for all who attend. So please also feel free to reach out if you have any questions about that meeting. And so with that, I'd like to begin today's webinar. So we will go through two presentations, and then afterward, we'll go through questions for our speakers. If you have any questions throughout the presentations, please feel free to pop those in the chat box, and I'll read those out loud for the recording during the Q&A session. So first, we'll hear from Erin Kilcullen, who is the head of management team of the Deschutes Soil and Water Conservation District in Oregon. And like I said, this is one of our recipients to the Urban Agriculture Conservation Grant Initiative. She provides leadership for financial, personnel, program planning, education, and outreach, and conservation project management and implementation. Erin has a BA in environmental geology and a master's in natural resources with a focus on restoration ecology. Erin moved to Bend, Oregon, where the district is located, in 2015 from Breckenridge, Colorado. And she has also previously worked with the Forest Service in the Deschutes National Forest and the Wildlife Department, and performed her thesis in the Upper Deschutes Watershed Council analyzing available habitat for steelhead and Chinook salmon. She's very passionate about rivers, wildlife, watershed management, and collaborating with several agencies to address natural resource concerns in Central Oregon. And she's also an avid traveler, snowboarder, mountain biker, hiker, and kayaker. So thank you very much for your presentation today, Erin. We're very much looking forward to it. And after Erin presents, we will also hear from Elli Blaine, who serves as the Urban Soil Health Program Director with the Indiana Association of Soil and Water Conservation Districts. She has a background in environmental studies, and prior to her current role, she worked for the nonprofit farm Indy Urban Acres. She has also worked on soil health outreach with urban and small farms with the Marion and Hendricks County Soil and Water Conservation Districts. She's excited to work with a team of enthusiastic and dedicated staff and a range of farmers and partners to improve soil health on urban and small scale farms throughout the state of Indiana. So thank you both for your presentations today. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Erin, to share your screen and get started.
Yeah, thanks, Ariel, and thanks everyone for joining. And so I started with the Deschutes DSWCD 2 years ago, and like my description said, this is a pretty different role for me. I came from a wildlife and riparian restoration background, so we took a stab at this urban agriculture grant application and we were awarded this project, and it was a really great experience, and I'm happy to present what we accomplished. So let me share my screen. So for this grant, I reached out since I don't know if anyone's aware of Central Oregon. It used to be more of a rural environment. Every day its development is occurring on every street corner. It's becoming more and more urbanized. And this was a great opportunity for our district to expand our priorities to a more urban environment and start working with those different communities. And so when this grant came across my table, I reached out to a friend of mine who works for a local nonprofit organization called the Environmental Center, and they have a great relationship with schools, school gardens, local communities. They kind of do all kinds of different things. And so we partnered with them, and then we also ended up partnering with the Bend Pollinator Pathway. And so the three of us came together and we applied for this grant. Our district was the lead on this, and we put together a soil health for school garden workshop. And so this idea came about due to COVID. A lot of the schools were obviously not in person. And so a lot of school gardens just kind of were neglected. Nobody was managing them. They weren't getting any upkeep. Their soil health was declining and diminishing. The students weren't involved, educators weren't involved. And so we thought this was a great opportunity to really work with local schools that either have gardens or in the future are hoping to have gardens and develop a soil health workshop. And so I just have a couple slides from the workshop that we did, but so this grant we were awarded about this time last year. And so our workshop, we were able to have it in person this previous October, which was so great to have it in person. We all wore a mask, but we had about a 3-hour presentation, and the first hour and a half was this slideshow that I'll be presenting with some of the slides. And then we did an in-person, we walked over to a local school and we helped them get their garden ready for winter. So we actually had manure dropped off from a manure exchange program that our district has available for the local community. And so we had a Redmond farmer drop off some manure from his local farm for us to utilize. And so all of the different attendees I think we had 25 attendees from 25 different schools attend our workshop. And so we all got to work together and spread the manure over the garden beds, cut down all the plants and get everything ready for winter. And then we also provided a lot of fun goodies for all of the attendees at our workshop. So in our soil health workshop, our main components, sorry, this is not moving down. So we discussed, like I said, it was about an hour and a half presentation with everyone, and it was not just a presentation, it was great discussions, and all of the attendees were either teachers or had some capacity with a local school, and they were the ones that were in charge of the local school garden. And we also had some that had no expertise, no knowledge, but would love to in the future develop a school garden. And so we really went really into depth of the 4 principles of soil health. And so the 4 principles were minimize disturbance, maximize soil cover, maximize continuous living roots, and then maximize biodiversity. And then we also went through how that looks in local school gardens. And I can also put in the chat a link to, we also did a virtual presentation after the in-person event. So if anybody would like to see the full presentation of what we put together, I can put that in the chat for a link to that. And then in addition to the 4 things of soil health, we also had a whole presentation from the Bend pollinator pathway of the importance of native plants. So where we live in Central Oregon, it is on the eastern aspect of the Central Oregon Mountain Cascade Range. And so we're a high desert ecosystem. And so it's really important here to have a native plant community. And then she went really into depth with the importance of pollinator habitat and how all of these native plants and pollinator habitat can be incorporated into soil health, and then also school gardens, and just the benefits of this. She provided a whole plant list of local plants that can be utilized. We also provided each school that attended received 6 native pollinator plants. And these plants are able to bloom throughout different seasons throughout the summer. And we've already gotten pictures and feedback from all those schools and how they were able to plant these plants. Oops, sorry, I missed one. And then the third portion of this workshop was we partnered with this lady. Her name is Casey Ray Christopher, and she is an author on a book of engaging students and creating curriculums for school gardens. And so she discussed how we can engage students and she had multiple slides of this, of how you can incorporate kids learning into exploring, investigating, experimenting, and applying all these principles into their school garden. And she provides curriculums for kids all the way from kindergarten to high school, and how that will look for all these different grades. And then a great thing that we provided tidy whities. So for every attendee that came to the workshop, they got a very large pair of white tidy whities that they were able to utilize. And we've actually heard back from a couple schools that sent us pictures. And so the goal of this is to test how healthy your soil is. So you bury the tidy whities in your soil, and then you wait at least 60 days. And then and this is a great opportunity to work with kids on this as well. It's a really great project. And then you pull out your soil undies, and the more decomposed these white underwear is, the better health your soil is. So we've already gotten some feedback from some of the schools, and their undies were very decomposed. So that was a great project that we provided. And in addition to that soil health workshop, so we did the in-person event, and then we recorded a virtual option. Like I said, I will put that in the chat if anybody would like to see the full recording and slideshow of that. And then we also did a virtual live presentation for the Oregon Farm to School and Garden Network for their annual conference. And the Environmental Center annually does a garden grant program, and they had so many applicants this year. And so this grant actually assisted with funding additional grant opportunities. And here is a list of the 5 projects that this NACD grant was able to fund with contracting services. And each school, they had different projects that they would be utilizing these funding for. Some of it was to develop a garden, some was for fencing, some was for soil health amendments, some was just for materials, shovels. And so that was a really great opportunity. And then here's some pictures from our soil health workshop. So in the top left, that was the in-person event. We had lots of flyers, tables, we had lots of books available. We provided dinner for that as well. And then you can see pictures here of the manure pile that was dropped off. And then you can see pictures of volunteers and all the attendees spreading that over the garden beds. And the picture on the bottom right, that shows the garden beds ready for winter with all the manure piles. There's some pictures. So this top right picture is everyone that partnered on this project, including our staff members. And then this bottom middle picture is everyone that participated as well. And then here's a picture of all the plants that we provided for all the attendees. And then another component of this grant that we utilized we partner with the Environmental Center. They do a lot of education programs with local schools. So we developed our Smart Food Waste series that is kind of just in the beginning stages, but this will be a component that'll be an education opportunity to present to schools in the coming school year. And yeah, that was a quick summary, but that's how we utilize all of our funding and this great opportunity. And we're already discussing future projects and how we can apply for next year for this grant. So was that too fast, Ariel?
No, that was great. Thank you, Erin.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions for you as well after
Okay.
Elli's presentation. So with
Okay.
that, Elli, we'll pass it to you.
All right, bear with me as I'm clicking through to get to the right place. All right, does everything look okay? All right, well, thank you so much for having me on. Again, my name is Elli Blaine, and I'm here with the Urban Soil Health Program, which is a fairly new initiative that covers the whole state of Indiana. So slightly different scale than you just heard, but hopefully this program can help represent and drive initiatives here statewide that are really similar to what you're doing in Oregon. And I work for the State Association of Soil and Water Districts. And so I'm excited to be here once again. I'll share a little bit of background about this agreement and this program. What are we trying to accomplish? And then delve into the structure as well. How have we organized our program and where are we going from here? So I know you're from around the state, but just context, I wanted to share how this program came to be. We have a contribution agreement with the NRCS, and this started or was really launched 2 years ago when the NRCS approached the State Association of Soil and Water Districts to really build efforts and build upon pilot programs that were happening across the state to reach urban and small farm customers. And so State Association decided to take on this program and really use the connection with soil and water districts to leverage existing efforts and then build new efforts as well. We're supported again by NRCS, but also have funding from local soil and water districts, as well as our state soil conservation board. So we're drawing on a lot of different areas to help make this program happen. And so we have regional specialists that cover about 20 of our counties, and then I'm helping to direct the program statewide. And we have established that our mission is to improve soil health on our urban and community small scale agricultural land. I know it's kind of a mouthful, but it's really broad, we hope, intentionally, in order to incorporate not only our heavily populated urban gardeners and farmers, but also our small farmers as well, because we have a lot of small scale growers that might fit more in what you typically imagine as an urban farmer, vegetable grower that are in really rural environments as well. So we're trying to bring together, reaching a large audience. And we are aiming to really encourage and enhance local partnerships, addressing soil health on a small scale, and increase adoption of soil health management systems on those small acreage. And then provide education, learn from growers themselves, incorporate that into the resources and assistance that we're providing, and use our connections with traditional agency partners and conservation partners across the state to adjust and address a lot of the soil health initiatives that have been happening traditionally for large scale agriculture here. And as you're probably familiar, there's a lot of growers that fit under that non-traditional umbrella. And we have market farms, we have community gardens, school gardens, church gardens, a lot of nonprofit farms here, demonstration or research farms, our backyard and home gardeners. And so I typically try to present our program as reaching those who grow food, reaching our diverse specialty crop producers, our diverse vegetable farmers, growers that are doing mixed vegetables, might have livestock, have flowers even. And as Erin mentioned on her presentation, the core of our program is really around our soil health principles, our 4 principles as set by our conservation agencies. So we're trying to help on those practices that cover minimizing disturbance, maximizing soil cover, maximizing biodiversity, maximizing continuous living roots. And so we get a lot of questions on the small scale of how do you do that? And that's why we're here. We're trying to boost technical assistance and resources to emphasize and promote and establish our conservation practices. So talking about low till and permanent bed systems on the small scale, mulching, cover cropping, crop rotation, increasing and boosting organic matter through compost and cover cropping and crop rotation, etc. And nutrient management, native and targeted plantings for beneficial insects, and the use of high tunnels in urban settings. So I like to sum up our program by saying that soil health is for everyone, and that's why we're here. And to also echo what NACD has set as a priority of reaching every community. So if you can, put in the chat, have you yourself worked with urban or small farms? Love to see that later. And then how are we structured? We are trying to boost our initiatives through local efforts by building working groups. And those working groups are comprised of a number of different organizations and entities and individuals, depending on where you go. Typically, soil and water districts are the anchor of these local working groups, and then they know their community best and are able to really lead those local efforts, bring together partnerships and really steer the direction of the working groups. And I got ahead of myself a little bit, but what is a local working group? They are a group that's responsible to advise on issues related to local, urban, small farm soil health. And so they are the boots on the ground. They are those people in your community that you call upon to help provide technical assistance on soil health practices. They're doing workshops and providing education and field days and creating new materials to reach the small farm audience. And so thinking about partnerships, those partners can be really broad. We have our traditional conservation agency partnerships at the table typically. So our local soil and water districts work really closely with NRCS, work really closely with Purdue Extension, Agricultural University here, work really closely with Nature Conservancy and master gardeners. And so those organizations are typically at the table, but these local working groups aim to extend beyond that and bring together local organizations such as sharing gardens that are teaching and providing a network of garden spaces that provide free produce. Libraries are involved, depending on where you go, universities. And so there's a big table that everyone can come together with in these working groups. And so our program is structured such that we can provide seed funding to these local working groups to get established and get active, especially if the local soil and water district really hasn't reached a small farm or urban audience before. So we have 4 categories of assistance that we can provide. We pay the local working group for any site visits done or technical assistance provided on soil health, and then also can reimburse for educational events or new materials that they create. And so these site visits and technical assistance, that's really the boots on the ground, getting people out there in the community, talking about concerns, talking about those practices, the soil health practices that growers can do on their farm. And I have just been so encouraged over this past year to, at least more recently, be able to actually get out on farm with growers and see in the field what people are facing and how we can tailor more of our educational assistance statewide to those needs. Also on educational materials and events, we as our core urban soil health team have been doing a lot of events, both virtually, some now in person as well, providing field days, bringing new speakers from across the state to the table, and really leaning on our local growers that have that expertise. So there's a lot of co-learning happening, and some of the virtual workshops that we've been doing are recorded, so I'll be able to share that with all of you as well. And then this Got Worms workshop, a flyer, is from a local working group. So they are also in charge of creating their local events and tailoring those to what they want to do and what they see as needs in their community. And as educational materials, we've been able to do some videos, and I think there's a real opportunity for creating more videos locally and showcasing our small farms, and then also fact sheets or guidance documents for small farmers, how to collect soil samples, how to cover crop and terminate oats for a small farm. And we've been doing cover crop events, so planting cover crops, what cover crop mixes or species are best utilized in a small farm setting, depending on that grower's goals. How do you do cover crop mixes? How do you terminate organically? And I put this in here to remind myself that we have been doing some Spanish speaking translation and are looking to do even more to reach a broader audience in our community. So then what can our regional specialists do for you? Well, if you're in a different state, we might not be able to do a whole lot, but this is how we're structured, is that our individual specialists are that regional touch point for promoting and assisting our customers, and then assisting those local working groups. So there's a lot of go-between between our specialists and our working groups, and they're doing tours, field days, providing presentations and workshops, doing demonstrations, helping to write newsletter articles, be at farmers markets, and really help bring those partners to the table and lead those conversations. For soil and water districts that might not be so familiar, it can be hard to know, where do I go and find small farm producers? How do I get in front of people? I'm already doing so much. I have a full plate. Who can help me start this program? So that's what our regional specialists are there to do. So I'd like you to take a moment and think about your own community and who's around you. And if you have not worked with urban or small farmers before, or if you have, but are looking to broaden your network, where can you find partners to work with? Who right now could you reach out to tomorrow to bring somebody else to the table and reach somebody new with soil health? And where are we going? I don't have all the answers. Just a couple of takeaways are that we're continuing to build working groups. I said 2 years ago is when this program was started. It has a large back history of pilot programs and urban initiatives, but I was hired in January of last year. We had a team established in March. And so we are still fairly young, and I'm really proud of the work that we've done so far, but we have a long way to go too. So we'll keep establishing working groups, learning from our local partners, listening to districts, listening to others on how they want to take control of those local groups and what can we do. And I'd like to challenge myself and others, if you are working kind of with those traditional partnerships of your conservation agencies, like, yes, make those stronger, and yes, look more broadly. So are there, I guess, non-traditional partners that we can bring to the table more and leverage similar efforts to address the needs of all of our communities? We talk regularly with NRCS and are in conversation with them also about adopting new technical standards and scenarios from the federal level that might be available here in our state, and also then new standards that are adopted. How do those actually get in practice out on the land? And what does it mean to do residue management or no-till on a small farm? And how do we bring to bear all of the technical knowledge that is in our state to creating more resources and technical assistance for our small farm customers? So I'm really excited about where that work is going. And I will share in the chat some follow-up resources. Some of these are more Indiana specific, of course. There's our newsletter that you can subscribe to. And then there is a box link also to some recorded webinars and other fact sheets. So those may be valuable if you're not just in this state. And if you'd like to get in touch with me or reach out and see more about our program, we have a pretty new website, so it's not really a whole lot there yet, but please reach out, and love to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you both. I'd like to remind our audience now, please feel free to put questions within the chat box, and I'll make sure to read those out loud for our recording and the audience as well. So while we're waiting for some questions from our audience members, I want to thank you again both for these great presentations and really highlight why we went in the order that we went in, because we have a great opportunity to see projects that were implemented on sort of the smaller scale, and then see urban soil health at what a program might look like at sort of a larger regional scale as well. But in both cases, you both mentioned sort of leveraging existing programs and building those partnerships. And Elli, you kind of captured that really well in asking our audience too what some of the new partners may be that they could reach out to. But I would like both of your perspectives, especially yours, Erin, seeing as you just went through an urban ag grant and you mentioned that you're new to the space. There's a lot of districts who are just beginning in sort of the urban and community smallholder agricultural space. And it might be an entirely new topic for some of our districts, especially in some of our more rural states or rural parts of states. So if both of you could maybe just spend a couple of minutes discussing sort of your start to the journey and any recommendations you might have for districts that are jumping into urban ag for the first time. And Erin, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So I think when I started, we're a pretty small SWCD, and our main focus here in Central Oregon is irrigation improvement projects and forest health projects. So this was a completely new realm for our district, for our board. And this grant opportunity came from one of my board members who works with the Oregon Association of Conservation Districts. So similar to who Elli works with, but in the state of Oregon. And I was at a loss, to be honest. I was like, we don't have any partners in urban agriculture. We don't have relationships with the urban community currently. When I started, we were just such a small district, and we worked more with the rural community within our county. And I think the biggest assistance was collaboration and partnerships. I mean, building that connection with the environmental center. They take advantage of your community and your different organizations within your county or your different communities. It's just great to learn. There's such a big resource. When I first reached out to the environmental center, none of us had an idea for this grant. We looked at this application, and then we had meetings, and for me, they were a tool to utilize that already had relationships within the urban community. So they have garden network community with local schools. They do education programs. And so I think this was a great starting point for our district to really utilize partnerships, and that we're all here to assist each other, and that we can all tackle new programs within the urban community together. And you can't do it solo. There's not one district that can do all of this. And I think this really just started the momentum building for our district, where we're starting to get new relationships. So now we have a whole new relationship with the environmental center and local schools, and these relationships will just keep snowballing and building. And then that'll just continue to grow in our urban environment for new projects, and everything just builds off of each other. So I think, yeah, just starting small, which is what we did. I mean, this was a very small grant and it was a great opportunity. And I think the potential will just continue to build. And this is a great opportunity for local schools. They can use this workshop. I mean, local farms, just the whole urban community. I mean, soil health is so important. So just really having that understanding in our local communities. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. Elli?
Yeah.
I definitely agree that collaboration and partnerships are really key. I'm only one person. I wish I were more people, or could, have that extension of time and resources, and you need to look to others to make that happen. And, I try to say often, it's important not to recreate the wheel. I guess there are new resources and new materials that do need to be developed, new programs that do need to be developed, but at that core is existing assets that other organizations have, existing resources. So it's really about bridging those gaps, bringing those puzzle pieces together. I would say I've heard from a lot of districts that just don't have the time, or feel they don't have the time nor the capacity, nor the education potentially to assist customers, or were hesitant to reach out because they didn't feel that they could provide sound advice, provide sound assistance that would actually benefit. And so I think I would encourage people to start the conversation. You don't know where you are unless you start that conversation. Reach out and listen to what you're hearing, and also provide prompts. I had a lot of people say that they're not in an urban environment. And I said, well, we can reach small farmers too. And they're like, I don't know if we have many of those. I'm like, well, do you have a farmer's market? Oh yeah, of course we have a farmer's market. Well, who's there? Oh, well, it's, somebody who grows tomatoes, or, oh yeah, they do have a high tunnel, or then, I think the church is starting a new garden project. So I think having that, and it can be informal, it could be structured. I've done asset mapping with partners, just bringing people to the table and providing guided questions. Finding people who do have the time. Here, there's a really active Master Gardeners network. Often sometimes people are retired who are part of that network and have the drive, have the expertise, and get out there. I think I had some more to share, but I am forgetting right now. So
no, you
just having the spark.
Yeah, absolutely, Elli. And you hit the nail on the head with Master Gardeners. That's a huge partner for a lot of our districts that work in the urban ag space. And you also, again, really highlighted that, often when we're thinking about urban agriculture, it goes beyond what a traditional farmer may look like. And that does include, as Erin highlighted as well, school gardens and church gardens, and such a variety of people that don't represent sort of the traditional. So getting out there and talking to those individuals and those groups is really important.
I was going to add one thing too that I learned. So where I am located in Central Oregon, it's very urbanized, but it's also, I think, a lot of conservation organizations are trying to bridge the gap between the rural and the urban environment and have an understanding of both, because there can be some conflict there. I think so many people are moving here and they're living within the cities and they don't have an understanding of the rural environment. And so I think we have a manure exchange program, which is coming from rural landowners that have cattle or livestock or horses or hobby farms that even just have goats. And so this was a great opportunity to advertise that program as well. I mean, if you just want to have a garden in your backyard or a community garden, like there's resources from the rural environment. They could provide the resources for soil health. And it was just there's such opportunity to bridge those two different environments and really connect them. So we were able to use manure from a local farmer for a school garden. And I educated myself so much too on soil health. And when I want to start a garden in my yard, I mean, now I have all these manure contacts to help my soil health. So that was a great opportunity as well.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. And we have a couple of questions in the chat, and I'm going to take them out of order because one feels a little relevant to your last point. And that is from Laura, and she was interested in learning how both of you advertise your events or services to the urban audience beyond social media. And so this feels relevant in the composting space, especially, Erin. You have this great service. So how do you connect that to people that might need it?
That is a tricky question that we are still trying to figure out, honestly. So we have all these for the manure exchange program. We also have a pasture exchange program. You have so many people that for the manure exchange, there's so many people listed within our program that have the manure. And so getting the people that actually want to utilize that program is a little bit trickier. Educating them on that or providing a means to deliver that is what we're still trying to figure out. But as for outreach for this specific grant, we did a press release. So I have all of our little social media, I wouldn't say social media, but our local newspapers, news outlets. I have a whole list of those contacts that for new projects and grants, we do press releases. And the organization that I partnered with, they already had that relationship with the schools. So that was kind of a done deal. They work with the Oregon Garden Network. And so when so that was easy for this grant. So that's why I really reiterate collaboration with different organizations, because a lot of organizations and partnerships, they can provide those like missing links to put together projects.
Awesome, thank you. Elli, any comments on advertising and reaching different audiences?
Don't have a lot of substantive recommendations. I would say right now we're really drawing upon social media and electronic forms of reaching out to people. We are using those partnerships outlets as well, and co-promoting events, using electronic newsletters. There's a lot of duplication of events and a lot of draws on people's time. So I feel like you have to do it all. You have to do all modes of communication, and make sure that things are out there in front of people frequently enough to not only sign up, but then get reminders and then attend. I would say it is definitely a challenge, and I don't have a lot of solutions yet. Except for local soil and water districts often have published newsletters still. So making sure that there is a press release or a write-up or a newsletter article that could go into that printed form too, to reach people that might not be online. And then just different formats, having videos, having handouts at libraries, or posters for events, flyers that you can tangibly hand out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you both highlighted something that's really important, which is a diversity of strategies to make sure that you're reaching multiple people through different pathways. And I just want to put in another plug for previous webinars through NAC's Urban and Community Conservation Webinar Series. I linked the YouTube in the chat box. This webinar, as well as all our others, as I mentioned, for this fiscal year at least, are on the YouTube channel. And we did one in October, I believe, on marketing your conservation district. So for districts who may be new to trying to reach new audiences or thinking about your communications plan broadly, that webinar is incredibly helpful in terms of understanding what some opportunities might be, as well as helping you plan what those outreach strategies might look like. All right, so I'd like to touch on Eileen's question as well, because this is one that we often get within the urban ag and urban conservation space, which is how each of you might be looking at or addressing conservation standards specific for smaller scale and urban farms as they relate to NRCS's technical standards. So often we see districts who are supporting urban farms on significantly smaller scales than what NRCS's practices might be able to fit. And this is particularly relevant in the incentive-based conservation programs like EQIP, when the payment scales might be on an acre. So a district may be looking at 50 cents or something, or excuse me, a farmer may be looking at 50 cents for an incentive on a practice. But of course, we want to encourage those, the adoption of those practices as well. So I'm curious if either of you have experience in that space or working with NRCS on those practice standards, and if you have any comments or recommendations.
I have not. Oh, sorry. You go ahead. I have not had experience. We work closely with NRCS, but more large scale irrigation and forestry projects. We do have a small scale high tunnel and organic initiative, and we've been assisting them with outreach efforts for a CIS that they have with throughout Oregon for that, but we have not worked closely with NRCS on small farms, urban farms.
I think probably because of the nature and scale of this program, I have been able to have the opportunity more recently within the last 3 months or so. Have we really delved into those conversations more substantively? I'm lucky in that our local NRCS, our state NRCS, is putting a lot of effort and resources to bear in the urban and small farm environment. And one of their contribution agreements is with someone to specifically look at their existing standards and scenarios for the state to provide recommendations. So I've been able to work closely with that person. So if your state is able to entertain contribution agreements, I think that's a way to really extend efforts and maybe initiate a conversation on that if they haven't. And yes, our state this past fiscal year adopted new small farm scenarios and practices that were available already nationally, that were already developed. So one on mulching for high tunnels, but that could also be applied beyond high tunnels on an acre or less. And that looks at different kind of natural mulching materials, payment for hay, straw, even potentially leaf matter that somebody has collected on their own property, and then you can pay them to apply that on their own property in their growing space. And also synthetic materials, so landscaping fabric and plastic mulch, although we're still working through that because we don't feel comfortable that plastic mulch, we should be incentivizing plastic mulch because usually that's used in a tillage system. And do we really want to be promoting tillage, even though we are addressing weeds with the use of plastic mulch? So we're starting to have those conversations. And just earlier today, I was on a call thinking about the new national standards that could be adopted here in the state. And it's my task in the next couple of weeks to look at the nuances of those. So I think that there is an opportunity, and hopefully your state NRCS is amenable to thinking through that, because I think NRCS wants help too. You know, they want to learn from small farmers and SWCDs that have experience working with urban farmers on how do you do transplanting into mulch? How do you do seeding into a low till or low residue system or high residue system? So those conversations are really necessary and important. And I'm glad, Eileen, you're thinking about it. And if you're doing work in your state, I would love to know what your experience is.
Yeah, thank you for that, Elli. And this is a question, Eileen, thank you for posing it as well. We hear it, like I said, often among the districts within NECD spaces, but I would like to acknowledge as well that Chief Terry Cosby of NRCS, I mean, he's well aware of the issue, and he's also incredibly incredibly motivated around reaching underrepresented audiences as well as urban agriculture. We hear often from him that we're looking forward to seeing new practice standards potentially, as well as more training within the urban conservation planning space as well. So for those districts and individuals who do work closely with NRCS and just broadly in terms of promoting the adoption and implementation of various practices, we're likely to see a huge revolution in the space within the next few years. So thank you for posing that question as well, Eileen. All right, so now we have a question from one of our stalwart enthusiasts related to urban conservation in Florida, Betty Jo Tompkins, who 5 years ago started the Hillsborough 100 Conservation Challenge through an NACD grant, and has been very successful in reaching inner city, urban, suburban, and rural communities alike. Her theme is conservation is everybody's business, and they collaborate with every type of group, and they just kicked off a 2-year program with Rotary called Operation Pollination, and it's really taken off. They also work with Kiwanis, Lions, Civitan, and all youth groups like 4-H, FFA, Scouts, etc. So Betty Jo always brings lots of good dialogue to our Urban Grant networking sessions, and thank you for that, Betty Jo. And so she is curious if either of you have perspectives as well on running programs or volunteer programs. I'd be interested in that as well with civic clubs and how you might manage some of those relationships and working with youth groups, civic organizations, etc.
I don't work with civic groups. I would say that there's a ton of other organizations that's more of their wheelhouse than the SWCD. I think this could be an opportunity for future partnerships, but at this time, yeah, we're just so small. And so when I started, this urban agriculture is a whole new wheelhouse for us. And so we hope to pursue it more and grow the program. But thanks, Betty Jo. I'd love to learn more about your program and all the details.
Elli, you're on mute.
The one example I can think of right now, it's not through a civic club, but we have our Master Naturalist program for usually Master Gardeners, and then also the Master Naturalist program, and some youth are involved in that. So we've been able to reach and engage youth that way. I'm drawing a blank. Unfortunately, I am not thinking of local efforts that are really that are a key part of those local working groups right now. But I do know that a lot of local districts are working with youth organizations. So I'm sorry that I don't have the examples to spit them off right now, but I'm sure there are examples in our state.
Yeah, absolutely, Elli. And just like the Master Gardeners, 4-H, FFA, church groups, other civic organizations are something that we often see within the partnership space. And they're a great, reliable source of volunteers as well when you have those big piles of compost that you need to spread around. So thank you to all of those organizations for their efforts in support of our projects as well. So we are approaching the hour, so I would like to ask one last additional question of each of you. So, often a question we get is, what do districts do for funding beyond NACD and NRCS programs? So I'm curious if either of you have perspectives on that question. And then if not, sort of what's next? What are your growth opportunities that you're looking forward to over the next year and beyond?
Yeah, I can start. So we actually have a couple grants with NACD. We have the urban agriculture, and then we've been getting the technical assistance grants to provide assistance to landowners for irrigation improvement projects and forest health projects. And then we also received money through our county through the ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act. So COVID relief, we presented to the county and received money that way. We're pretty small. It's kind of grant to grant basis. I'm not sure everyone's background, but SWCDs get biennium money through the Oregon Department of Agriculture and OWEB through our capacity grants. And we also have a grant through the Bureau of Reclamation, and we're seeking more water smart grants through them for irrigation improvement projects. A lot of irrigation work here. We're in a big drought in Central Oregon and Eastern Oregon. So water is the hot topic, and forest health fires are rampant on the West Coast. So that's kind of the big concentration currently, and where all the funding is becoming available. I'm hoping to pursue more money. We just applied for the infrastructure bill for some sage grouse wildlife projects. And I just keep trying to build the capacity. There's lots of different avenues. Those federal funding sources, I struggle to find information on those and those infrastructure bills. I know America the Beautiful should be coming out with opportunities. I think if you're an SWCD, NRCS is just such a great partnership. I mean, they have federal dollars coming in all the time. We have a technical assistance grants through, I said OWEB without explaining that. That's, sorry, the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. That's a state agency that receives funding through our lottery system here in Oregon, which is a great program. It's crazy that playing the lottery really has millions and millions of dollars for conservation projects. So we always tell everyone to keep playing lottery in the state of Oregon. So, but yeah, that's all I have on that. And yeah, for the urban agriculture, I see this as just a start and the momentum. One of my coworkers, she's really starting to reach out to the cities within our county, the county, to start really diving deep into community gardens. And there's so much development here and low income development that's occurring. And so really reaching those communities to create compost facilities or local gardens at these apartment dwellings is a great opportunity that we would love to pursue. So, yeah.
Plenty to do, Erin, that's for sure.
Always,
Elli,
right? Yeah.
Elli, what's next for you?
Well, on the funding side, I know a lot of districts really struggle. A couple of takeaways are we have a Clean Water Indiana fund pool, which is primarily funded through cigarette tax dollars. Kind of bizarre that ends up funding conservation initiatives, but it's great. Hopefully there is more opportunities in the future for a permanent source of dedicated funds through that, but local districts can then apply for grants to that fund through our state soil conservation board. We have a really strong conservation partnership and that brings together State Department of Ag. They have specialty crop grant projects here in the state. I don't know if that's similar in other states. I'd say American Farmland Trust, I know, did pilot a program via providing micro grants for small farm agriculture. And I know last I heard, they were looking to apply for more funding to bring that to other states. And then also just looking creatively, locally as well. There's a farm here that started with a woman who approached a beverage company that she knew had a lot of land in her community and said, I live in a food desert. I need to be able to grow food. You have land, and approached them with the opportunity and was able to secure a permanent farm. So I think looking creatively in your own community for who those stakeholders are and get excited about soil health. And I guess that leads me into my not moving around enough. This is automatic lights. Efficiencies have its downfall, right? But I think, next steps for me are really to continue to listen and drive conversations around how to support more small farms, more diverse farms across the state, and think creatively too for how do we create these working groups such that they are self-sustaining, not only building capacity amongst our existing organizations, but also bringing together new partnerships in ways that continue on. We are a five-year agreement, but I sincerely hope that our efforts are able to be sustained.
Excellent. Thank you, Elli. That was a great note to end on. And again, thank you both for these wonderful presentations. I think you both really highlighted well the opportunities, the innovative strategies for building programs and projects, and like I said, opportunities within this space. So thank you again for your time today. And thank you everyone for joining us. And as I mentioned, I'll share the link around as well once we have that to everyone that registered for the webinar today. And as always, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out at any time to NECD, myself, Ron Rohall, or anyone on our staff as well. So thank you again, Erin and Elli, and thank you everyone for
you.
joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Have a great day.